What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the specs and features of the Samsung Galaxy S5 to the Samsung Galaxy S6 and S6 Edge. So the Samsung Galaxy S5 wasn't as successful as Samsung had hoped, so they've tried to turn that around this year with two flagships this time. So we've got the S6 as well as the S6 Edge, and I'm combining them both in this video because they are very similar. So what are the differences between these two, and is it worth upgrading from the S5 to the S6 or S6 Edge? Well, do hit that thumbs up button and let's find out. So kicking off with the screen size, now you've got the same screen size on all devices, 5.1 inches. Obviously on the S6 Edge, that screen curves over the edges, so you've got dual curves on both edges. Those give you some nice looks as well as some additional features which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Now in terms of resolution, the Samsung Galaxy S5 has a 1080p resolution, that's 1920 by 1080, works out to roughly about 432 ppi pixel density. Now there was a Quad HD version of the S5 as well, but that was only available to limited markets. Now the S6 and S6 Edge both come with a Quad HD resolution, so that's 2560 by 1440, works out to roughly about 577 ppi pixel density. I believe that's the highest pixel density on any smartphone right now, so you're going to be getting some very crisp and sharp details. Compared to a 1080p display, you won't be able to notice the difference at a distance, but bringing the device close, you are really going to be able to see the advantage of having those extra pixels. The fact that all of these have a Super AMOLED display will mean that you're going to get some very deep blacks and some nice vibrant colors. Now although all of these devices have the same size screen, you've got slight differences in terms of the sizes. So the S6 actually comes in 1.4mm taller compared to the S5, and it's 2mm smaller in terms of the width, and it's also 1.3mm smaller in terms of the thickness. So it's a very thin device, even thinner than the iPhone 6. Now with the S6 Edge, it isn't taller, so it's 0.1mm smaller in terms of height compared to the S5, and it's 2.4mm smaller in terms of the width, and it's also 1.1mm smaller in terms of the thickness, so small all around. Now moving on to the build, so the S5, this was probably the biggest criticism of the device, is the fact that it had a full plastic build. So you've got a soft touch dimpled finish back, which gives a good grip to the device and actually feels pretty decent, but it doesn't feel premium, and this is something that was lacking. You did however have IP67 water and dust resistance, which was really good on the Samsung Galaxy S5. Now the S6 and the S6 Edge both aim to go for a premium build, so you've got a metal frame with glass panels on the front and the back. So this is Gorilla Glass 4, which is supposed to be very tough. Reminds me a little bit of the Xperia devices, the fact that you've got a metal frame with the glass panels. And one thing that you are missing here on the S6 and the S6 Edge is that water and dust resistance, so they've compromised on this and they've taken that out to go for that premium build. Now this is something that's a little bit questionable for me, because considering the Xperia devices which have a similar build, they still have water and dust resistance. So I think Samsung could have done this, but they have opted not to go for water and dust resistance. So this is just something that you're gonna have to bear in mind, and you're gonna have to compromise with if you want that more premium build and feel. Now in terms of the weight, the S6 and the S6 Edge actually come in lighter compared to the S5, 7 grams lighter for the S6, and the S6 Edge comes in roughly about 13 grams lighter. So even though you've got more of a premium build here, they are lighter in weight, so that's really good to see. Now moving on to the internals, the S5 has a Snapdragon 801 processor, and that's clocked at 2.5 GHz quad core. There's also an octa-core version available to certain markets. Now with the S6 and the S6 Edge, they've actually not gone for the Snapdragon this time. Apparently the Snapdragon 810 had heating issues, so they've opted for the Exynos version, at least for now anyway. And now this is a 64-bit chip and it's an octa-core processor, so we may be seeing a different version of it later on. No doubt this is going to be a very high performing, because it is the top of the line right now. We're going to have to look at benchmarks and speed tests to see how much the differences actually are. Now moving on to the RAM, the S5 has 2 GB of RAM, the S6 and S6 Edge have 3 GB of RAM, so you do have an improvement here. In terms of the RAM, lots of people will say we might be seeing 4 GB, but we've just got the 3 GB. This should be really good for your multitasking. Now moving on to the storage options, so the S5 you had in either 16 or 32 GB models. The 16 GB base model was the most popular, most widely available. Now with the S6 you've actually got a lot more options here, so you've got the 32, 64 and 128 GB versions. Now the big thing here is Samsung users might want to sit down for this. You don't have expandable storage on the S6 and the S6 Edge, so this is a big drawback here for a lot of users. The S5 does come with a micro SD card slot, which allows you to expand by up to 128 gigabytes. So this is something that is going to be quite controversial, no doubt. Samsung have opted not to go for expandable storage this time. Personally, I would have liked to have seen it. HTC One M9 has expandable storage. A lot of the Sony devices also have this, so I'm slightly surprised that they've gone for this model. But you do have flash storage, so it's supposed to be very fast to write to. This is on the smartphone itself. It's supposed to be faster than any other smartphone, so this will be interesting to see, and maybe this is the reason why they've not included expandable storage. Now the camera, so the S5 has a 16 megapixel rear facing camera. It's an absolutely great camera, probably one of the best last year. Nice crisp and clear shots. You can see lots of examples on the channel. Also had fast autofocus. Now with the S6 and the S6 Edge, you've got an improvement here, not in terms of the megapixels. You've still got 16 megapixels, but you've got optical image stabilization, so this is a big advantage. It should really help you get more stable and steady shots, and also for your video it's really going to help get you some smoother footage. Now in terms of additional features on here, firstly you've got tracking autofocus, so this is going to track your subject and keep the autofocus on there, so that should be really good. You've also got a professional mode, so by default you'll have the basic settings, but then you can go into this pro mode and tweak some things on there, and you can also tap the home button twice to activate the camera, so this should help you get some really quick shots. Now in terms of video, both of these support 4K, so that's 2160p from the rear facing cameras. Now obviously because the S6 and the S6 Edge have optical image stabilization, that's really going to help with that video footage at 4K. Now on the S5 you didn't have any sort of digital stabilization either at 4K, so the 4K footage wasn't really usable unless you were going to use it at a static pace, which, you know, usually with your smartphone you are going to be using it handheld. So this was a bit of a disadvantage here on the S5. This has been improved on the S6 and the S6 Edge. And moving on to the front facing cameras, the S5 has a 2 megapixel front facing camera capable of filming 1080p HD. Now realistically speaking, I was not impressed with the front facing camera at all of the S5. It wasn't so great, especially in low light, and it just gave you some fuzzy results. So this has been improved on the S6 and the S6 Edge. You've got a 5 megapixel front facing camera with an f1.9 aperture, and this is supposed to give you some great low light shots as well. So you've got a feature which takes a few images in low light and will combine those to give you brighter images, and you've also got real-time HDR from the front-facing camera. In terms of video, you've got 1440p. Now this isn't confirmed, but the Note 4 has this, which has a 3.7 megapixel front-facing camera, so I'd also expect this to be on the S6 and the S6 Edge. Now moving on to the operating system, so you've got Android on both devices here, and it is the latest version, so you're going to be getting Lollipop. The S5 did get the Lollipop update just I think about a month ago or so. So you've got Lollipop, you've got the latest version here, but both of these come with TouchWiz. Now the improvements that you've got here on the S6 and the S6 Edge is the fact that TouchWiz has been toned down. They've said they've cut down a lot of the features by about 40%, so this should reduce lag and make things a lot faster. We'll have to see these hands-on to really see the difference between these two. Now moving on to the additional features, so the S5 did come with some bells and whistles. So you had the fingerprint scan on the home button, but this was really bad and didn't really work too well. So you had to swipe rather than touch like you do with Touch ID, and this was very inconsistent and was quite frustrating at times as well. They also have the heart rate sensor, which is the back device, which I didn't actually use at all. And the speaker was at the back, so it was decent and it was quite loud, but it wasn't too great because it was facing the back and it was easy to cover. Now with the S6, firstly, the home button is a fingerprint scanner, but it's a touch button, so this is supposed to be working a lot more like Touch ID rather than the swipe, which was a little bit annoying. And you've also got Samsung Pay now. So Samsung Pay is going to be using NFC as well as MST to allow you to make payments, so this is said to be improved quite a bit. Now I'm not sure if they're going to take over some of these features and put them in the S5 with an update. That's yet to be confirmed. You've still also got a heart rate sensor, which I'm not sure how many of you are going to use, but you're going to be able to use it also to take pictures and things. So if you touch that, then that's going to allow you to take a picture. So it's not just going to have the single function. And the speaker is also at the bottom now, so rather than having at the back, it's at the bottom. So this should give you some better sound. And with the S6 Edge, you've got those dual curves on either side, so these are going to give you some features such as your time. So you can have it laying on your desk and it's going going to have really low brightness and have your time and things on there. You can also see some notifications and you can scroll through them. You can quickly launch applications from the sides as well. And one of the newest features that you've gotten here is you can have 5 contacts with 5 different colors, and you can easily connect to them straight from the edge. Or if you've got your device on the table, then you'll have a color, specific color for those 5 contacts, and that will glow, so it'll let you know who's contacting you before you even pick up the device. Now, moving on to the batteries, the Samsung Galaxy S5 has a 2800 milliamp battery. This is removable, and it did get me through the day on most occasions, and the fact that it was removable gave the advantage of carrying around a spare. Now, with the S6, you've got a 2550 milliamp battery. With the S6 Edge, you've got a slightly larger 2600 milliamp battery. Now, these are not removable, so this is another thing that Samsung have not put on their device. Now, they're saying that they've improved battery life to such a point that this is not needed anymore, so you don't need to have a removable battery. Now, that's something that I'll leave you guys to discuss, and let me know in the comment section below. The 2 things that you do have on the S6 and the S6 Edge: firstly, wireless charging. This was not available built in on the S5. You'd have to either get an additional case or a card to enable wireless charging, but this comes built in on the S6 and the S6 Edge. And you've also got fast charging, so this is something that they introduced on the Note 4. They've carried this onto the S6 and the S6 Edge, which will give you roughly about 50% charge after 30 minutes, so this should be really good. Now, finally, moving on to the price, the S5 right now you can pick it up for roughly between 350 to 400 pounds in the UK, or around about $550 in the US, so this is off contract. This price will no doubt lower as the S6 and the S6 Edge come out. That is said to be roughly about 10th of April is when you can expect to get your hands on the S6 and the S6 Edge. Pricing has not yet been confirmed. I'd expect them to be between 600 and 650 pounds on release, so probably about 600 for the S6 and about 650 for the S6 Edge, and roughly about 700 to 750 dollars in the US. Now, that's based on standard flagship prices. So there we have it, the S5 versus the S6 and the S6 Edge. Now, they have cut back on some features which a lot of users may have been used to, such as expandable storage, the removable battery, as well as the IP67 dust and water resistance. But you do have some additional features here. You've got a much more premium build. You've got the dual edges on the Edge version, which will also be quite useful for some, and you've got improved cameras all around. So do you think there's enough here that's changed on the S6 and the S6 Edge compared to the S5? Do drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to this channel? I've got plenty more content coming up on here, and as soon as we've got the devices in hand on the 10th of April, you'll have plenty of comparisons and hands-on reviews. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV, and I'll see you next time. If you want to see more regular videos like this one, then be sure to hit the subscribe button, which will be below. If you're on a mobile device, it may be somewhere else. If you want to see my previous related video, then hit the link right here. If you want to stay in touch over Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, then all of the addresses will be there somewhere, as well as direct links in the description below. Okay, if you're still watching, then that means you've not done one of those things, so, you know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna go downstairs. See. Okay. There isn't really a downstairs. Anyway, so yeah.